Good evening. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar expressed his views in a discussion on the future of Afghanistan at Raisina Dialogue. We will tell you all about that, and our in focus tonight is US troops withdrawal from Afghanistan, options before India. That and more in this edition of Newsnight. I'm Manman Bhattacharya. Let's get started with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes stock of the availability of medical oxygen in the country at a high-level meeting, directs authorities to ensure adequate stocks for the next 15 days, especially for the 12 states that are worst hit by the pandemic. Centre asks states to ensure unhindered interstate movement of oxygen tankers, urges them not to force oxygen manufacturers to limit the oxygen supplies to their states only. Centre also decides to ramp up production of the indigenous COVID-19 vaccine Covaxin, production to be doubled by May and June and made 6 to 7 times by August 2021. Election Commission decides to ban all rallies, public meetings, corner meetings between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m. for the next phases of Bengal elections, asks organizers to provide masks and sanitizers at public meetings, extends the 72 hours silence period for the remaining 3 phases as well. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar reiterates India's support for an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned and Afghan-controlled peace process. Speaking at the Raisina Dialogue, Dr. Jaishankar cautions that future of Afghanistan should not be a return to its past. UK government clears extradition of Nirav Modi, the scamster who dwindled around 9,000 crore rupees from Punjab National Bank and fled to UK. UK's Home Secretary Preeti Patel signed the extradition order on Thursday. In the United States, a gunman shot 8 people dead and injured several others at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis, Indiana, before taking his own life. Police say the authorities did not feel there was an active threat to the community anymore. And in sports, Indian women wrestlers shine in Asian Championship. Vinesh Phogat wins gold in 53 kg category, while Anshu takes gold in 57 kg category. One of our top stories tonight, an all-out effort is being made by the Government of India to tackle the surging second wave of COVID-19. The government has assured that there are no shortages, even as it warned hoarders and black marketers of drugs like remdesivir of stern action. States too have rolled out measures to bring the situation under control. Here's more.
India continues to fight COVID pandemic spiritedly. Testing, tracking and restrictions are the leading weapons for the nation. Centre has made it clear once again that there is no shortage of anything and decisions are being taken to tackle the surge. Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan has said that with 1 year experience in tackling the situation, India is more than ready for the challenges ahead. He gave a stern warning to the hoarders and those indulging in black marketing of essential drugs.
हम सब प्रकार की परिस्थितियों के बारे में आज उससे लड़ने के लिए ज़्यादा बेटर ढंग से इक्विप्ड हैं, कम से कम मेंटली, इंटेलेक्चुअली, मॉरली और अपनी करेज की दृष्टि से। शायद हमारे पास आज पहले के मुकाबले 1 साल क्योंकि हमने लड़ाई को लड़ा है, सक्षम तरीके से लड़ा है, आज हमारे पास उससे भी ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस है।
UP has also taken many steps to fight the virus. 2 hospitals in Lucknow have been converted to dedicated COVID hospitals. OPD services in all government clinics is suspended. Weekend curfew in the state has been imposed. Only sanitation, sanitization and emergency services will be allowed during the weekend curfew.
पूरे प्रदेश में मास्क लगाने पर विशेष जोर दिया गया है। आज मुख्यमंत्री जी ने ये भी घोषणा की है कि यदि मास्क नहीं लगाया जाएगा तो भारी जुर्माना किया जाएगा और दूसरी बार अगर मास्क नहीं लगाएंगे तो कहीं अधिक जुर्माना किया जाएगा। इसके लिए आज ही सभी प्रशासनिक और पुलिस अधिकारियों को पुनः मजबूती से कहा गया है।
Other states including Madhya Pradesh, Bihar and Karnataka are also working on the war footing to control the spiraling surge of the cases.
राज्य सरकार लगातार कोशिश कर रही है कि सभी लोगों को जिनको आवश्यक स्वास्थ्य सुविधाएं चाहिए उनको स्वास्थ्य सुविधाएं मुहैया कराई जाए और अस्पतालों के अंदर बेडों की संख्या बढ़ाई जाए। एनएमसीएच को हम लोगों ने पूरी तरीके से कोरोना के लिए डेडिकेटेड करने का निर्णय लिया है। पीएमसीएच में बेड बढ़ा रहे हैं, एम्स में बेड बढ़ा रहे हैं।
Rajasthan has announced weekend curfew from 6 p.m. on Friday till 5 a.m. on Monday. Essential services will be exempt from the restrictions. Kerala has started massive testing drive to tackle the crisis, employing mobile testing vans to increase the reach of the testing facilities. Testing units are also being set up at various places. India's daily new cases continue to rise. 2,17,353 new cases were registered in the last 24 hours. 10 states including Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Chhattisgarh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal have shown a rise in the COVID daily new cases. 79.10% of the new cases are reported from these 10 states. The cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has crossed 11.72 crore as part of the world's largest vaccination drive. But people continue to ignore precautions and are not following COVID-appropriate behavior. Necessary advisory has been issued to ensure there is no overstocking of essential items by the households. The challenge is huge and the adversary very difficult to detect and defeat, but it is not impossible. With a combined effort and discipline, India can surely win this war against the COVID pandemic. Bureau Report, DD India.
Several key decisions, in fact, have been taken by the Government of India to tackle the surge of cases that we are seeing in the second phase of COVID-19 in the country. And the most important decision that was taken in a meeting that was chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Prime Minister reviewed the status of oxygen availability across the country, and the focus is on ensuring adequate medical grade oxygen supply in the country. So the focus is on ensuring that there is adequate oxygen supply within the country for medical purposes, so that COVID patients are not at a loss here and that there is adequate availability for all COVID patients across the country. Stress on ensuring synergy across the ministries as well as state governments. Also review of current situation of oxygen supply and also of projected use in the next 15 days. So a review of the current situation as far as oxygen supply is concerned was done, and also it was seen what probably could be the projected use as far as medical grade oxygen is concerned in the country. Also, assessment of district level situation has been done in 12 states which are the worst affected. So there is minute planning that is taking place to the district level. Focus is on seamless and free movement of tankers carrying oxygen. So focus is on ensuring that there is movement without any trouble of various oxygen cylinders, and that there is a seamless movement of oxygen cylinders and tankers. Prime Minister suggested increasing oxygen production as per capacity of each plant. So there was a review that was done of production capacity of each plant, and a decision was taken to ensure that there is an enhancement of production capacity of each plant. The government has allowed industrial cylinders to be used for medical oxygen. So the oxygen that is meant to be used for industrial purposes will be now used for medical purposes. That decision has been taken. What's more, there is also focus on enhancing medical infrastructure, but before that, efforts being made to import medical grade oxygen. So there is focus on indigenous production of oxygen for medical use, and there is also focus on imports of oxygen. Focus is also on building hospital infrastructure, so hospitals of central ministries and PSUs to set up dedicated COVID wards or blocks. Just like it was done last year, this direction has been given by the Union Health Ministry. COVID hospitals or blocks to have separate entry and exit points. This will ensure better COVID-19 management, as there would be separate entry and exit, and thus no meeting point as far as visitors who are moving in or moving out is concerned. Dedicated wards or blocks to have oxygen supported beds, ICU beds and ventilators. So these dedicated wards or blocks will be well equipped with oxygen supported beds, ICU beds and ventilators. And there will be more facilities that you'll see in the next slide. Dedicated wards or blocks to have critical care units and dedicated workforce. So all the facilities will be provided in the new dedicated wards or blocks that will be set up, or that we will see now, which in the form of hospitals under various central ministries and also PSUs. Moreover, the focus is on building COVID-centric hospitals, because a DRDO team has reached Lucknow. It was directed by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh to set up 2 COVID hospitals in Lucknow. We'll tell you more about that in the next slide. DRDO team to set up 2 COVID hospitals of around 500 bed capacity each. So 2 COVID hospitals of this capacity would be set up by the DRDO team on the directive of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Delhi's Sardar Patel COVID hospital to be ready by Monday. So this hospital will be ready by Monday. So a lot of focus on ensuring that there is COVID-specific hospital infrastructure in the country. The government has taken some prompt decisions as far as COVID-19 is concerned. The Union Home Secretary has written to states for seamless movement of oxygen tankers. So remember the meeting that the Prime Minister chaired today, the review meeting, where it was decided that there has to be adequate availability of oxygen cylinders and there has to be seamless movement of oxygen tankers across the country. In that view, that directive or letter has gone in from the Union Home Secretary to various states. Focus is on ramping up Covaxin production under Mission COVID Suraksha. Covaxin is an indigenous vaccine that India has produced. The focus is on ramping up the production of Covaxin under Mission COVID Suraksha within the country. So what are the targets that are being set? Well, under Atmanirbhar Bharat 3.0, vaccine production to increase by 7 times by July and August. So this is the focus as far as vaccines are concerned in India, that there has to be greater indigenous production, even as doors are being opened for foreign produced vaccines, including Sputnik V. Having said that, there is more in terms of targets that have been set. Target of producing 10 crore doses of vaccine by September. So this target has also been set by the government. So there will be 10 crore doses of vaccine that will be produced by September. The government of India is set to give financial assistance to vaccine manufacturers as well. So an all-out effort being made by the government of India to ensure that the current situation, when we are seeing a huge surge in numbers as far as COVID-19 new cases are concerned, and even the fatality is that we are seeing across the country, the government going all out to control the situation. And let's take a look at what the situation is in Maharashtra. Maharashtra is reporting the most worrying situation as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. The state reported 61,695 new infections on Thursday. Maharashtra's poor health infrastructure is chiefly responsible for the surge in coronavirus cases. The state is struggling to meet the growing demand for oxygen and antiviral drug remdesivir at medical facilities. Recently, 7 COVID-19 patients died in 2 private hospitals in Nalasopara, while 3 others succumbed at the Riddhi Vinayak Hospital within the Mumbai metropolitan region. While the families of the relatives blamed the lack of oxygen supply at the hospitals for the deaths, civic authorities and the hospital management denied the charge. Meanwhile, family members of COVID patients sat on a dharna at the collector's office in Pune due to the unavailability of remdesivir injection shots. And that's the situation in Maharashtra. Chhattisgarh continues to witness an upsurge in COVID-19 cases. Over 10,000 daily cases have been reported from the state for the past 9 days. Despite government's claims, basic facilities for medical treatment are not available in hospitals. The largest hospital in Chhattisgarh does not have beds for COVID patients. Moreover, the junior doctors engaged in COVID treatment do not even have N95 masks or PPE kits to wear. Because of this reason, most junior doctors are getting infected from the deadly virus. So that is the situation in both states of Maharashtra as well as Chhattisgarh. Let's go across now to our correspondent Tapas, who's been tracking all the developments very, very closely. Tapas, on the decision that has been taken, the review meeting chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to ensure adequate availability of oxygen tankers for COVID-19 patients across the country. A letter has been sent by the Union Home Secretary to states to ensure seamless movement of oxygen tankers. Tell us in detail about the various steps that have been taken and how that is likely to bolster the situation as far as oxygen availability is concerned.
Right, Murmun. So it was felt in the last few days that the supply of oxygen will be required in abundance, especially with the with the COVID cases surging, not just in the national capital but all throughout the country. So keeping that in mind, in the last few days, also in the last couple of days, also there were other ministries who were going about their work and trying to understand the number of oxygen cylinders, or number of oxygens that will be required to make it a point to provide to the states, especially the 12 states which are the high burden states where the COVID cases, the surge in the COVID cases has seen a tremendous number. So keeping that in mind, the Prime Minister took a detailed review of the current situation of the oxygen supply and projected use, especially in the next 15 days in these particular 12 particular states, and different ministries, the health ministry, the road, the steel, the DPIIT ministries, all the ministries were there, and it was felt that the numbers that were crunched even yesterday, that on 20th April, 25th April and 30th April, one would be requiring 4,880 metric tons, 5,619 metric tons and 6,593 metric tons of oxygen. So that was felt in these particular states, and to get a perspective, these ministries were asked by the Prime Minister to make sure that production of oxygen, the medical supply of oxygen, should be ramped up, and also has asked the ministries, different ministries also, to contribute to the matter. And he was informed by different ministries that that all the exemptions are being made to make sure that there is no red tapeism that will be that's there in providing oxygen to different states, especially the movement of the oxygen cylinder, interstate movement, intrastate movement. All these movements, they would have been taken care of. Also, Prime Minister spoke about the fact that round-the-clock oxygen supply, or by trucks, should be provided. In that sense, different all these manufacturers were told to ramp up their capacity for that, and that's something that the Prime Minister was very clear about. The transportation and around the and the turnaround time of a truck that which needs to be scaled up. So those are the major thing he spoke about and had a detailed review with the different ministries, and he also spoke about the fact that if required, this particular oxygen, medical supply of oxygen can be also, medical grade oxygen can be imported also. So keeping those things in mind, he spoke about this need that this particular second wave that has gripped the country needs to be tackled the way in a much more proactive manner, and the way they have done it earlier also. And this is something that Prime Minister has been talking about. The review meeting especially comes on the heels of MHA as well as other ministries who are working around the clock to ensure the supply of oxygen in different states, especially in these particular 12 states that we spoke about, these 12 states which have seen a massive rise in the COVID cases. Murmun.
Right, Tapas. Thank you for those updates. Moving on to the other top story that we are tracking, the stage is set for the 5th phase of polling in West Bengal on Saturday. Here's all that you need to know about the preparations that have been put in place.
All preparations have been completed for the fifth phase of assembly elections to be held on Saturday. Polling will be held from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. According to the Special Police Observer of West Bengal, a total of 1,071 companies of security forces will be deployed for the fifth phase of elections in West Bengal. Meanwhile, paramilitary forces have also been adequately deployed to prevent any disturbances in the elections.
हम लोग ये अपने जितने भी सिक्योरिटी फोर्स जितने अपने ट्रूप्स की जो है कोविड को ध्यान में रखते हुए कोशिश करते हैं कि सभी जो है हमारे जवान हैं सारे के सारे मास्क जो है उसको पहने रहें और सैनिटाइजर का है जो भरपूर इस्तेमाल करें और सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग को पूरा मेंटेन करके रखें, उसको करते हैं। किसी तरह का कोई भी बल प्रयोग नहीं किया जा रहा है जब तक कि किसी तरह की कोई आपदा नहीं आती।
In view of COVID-19 pandemic, the Election Commission has decided to allow a maximum of 1,000 voters in one polling station. Earlier, this number was 1,500. Voters with COVID-infected or suspected infection will also have the facility to vote by postal ballot after certification by the competent authority. Votes will also be cast on Saturday for the by-elections in 2 Lok Sabha seats and 12 assembly seats in 9 states. By-elections are being held for Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh and Belgaum Lok Sabha in Karnataka. Meanwhile, campaigning for the 6th phase of elections in West Bengal is gaining momentum. In this phase, polling will be held on April 22 for 43 assembly seats in 4 districts of the state. Home Minister Amit Shah held roadshow in Krishnanagar North and Barakpur. He also addressed several rallies. Addressing a public meeting in Tihata, Amit Shah described Rahul Gandhi as a tourist leader who only makes an appearance during election time.
अभी अभी हमारे देश में एक पर्यटक नेता है, पूरा चुनाव हो गया, राहुल बाबा दिखाई नहीं पड़े। देखा है आपने? देखा है? अभी अभी एक सभा कर गए और इन्होंने कहा कि बीजेपी का डीएनए कैसा है। राहुल बाबा, आप हमारे डीएनए की मत पूछिए, मैं हमारे डीएनए का परिचय करा देता हूं। हमारे डीएनए का मतलब है डी फॉर डेवलपमेंट, एन फॉर नेशनलिज्म राष्ट्रवाद और ए फॉर आत्मनिर्भर भारत। ये हमारा डीएनए है।
BJP National President JP Nadda also held a roadshow in Bardhaman's Galsi. Campaigning in the Panagar, he said that Mamata Banerjee pushed West Bengal into darkness and women under her rule were tortured.
ममता जी के राज में बहनों के साथ अत्याचार हुआ, बंगाल घरेलू वायलेंस में, रेप केसेस में, एसिड अटैक में, ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग में, सबसे ऊपर जाकर के खड़ा हुआ। महिलाओं के साथ अत्याचार, अब कमल खिलेगा, महिलाओं के साथ अत्याचार रुकेगा और विकास चलेगा, इस बात को आपको समझना है।
TMC chief Mamata Banerjee also held rallies and road shows. Campaigning in Nadia, she said that this election was to save Bengali identity. The left parties and other parties also campaigned for the assembly elections for 6th phase. Bureau Report, DD India.
Of West Bengal on Friday held an all-party meeting to build consensus on polling during the rest of the phases in the state. After the meeting, the Election Commission issued detailed guidelines prescribing arrangements at polling stations in view of the ongoing elections and unprecedented health concerns. It has banned rallies, public meetings, street plays and nukkar sabhas from 7 in the evening to 10 in the morning starting from the 16th of April in poll-bound West Bengal. In addition to this, the campaigning will have to end 72 hours before the 6th, 7th and 8th phase of voting. The campaigning for these phases shall end at 6:30 p.m. on 19th April. The Election Commission has also directed the organizers of the public meetings to ensure that there is distribution of masks and sanitizers to all those participating in rallies. Our lead story, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif and Afghanistan's National Security Advisor Hamdullah Mohib expressed their views on the road ahead in Afghanistan in the course of a session in Raisina Dialogue in light of the decision taken by the Biden administration and the NATO to withdraw all their troops from Afghanistan by the 11th of September this year, which is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. All agreed that Afghanistan cannot retreat to Afghanistan of 1990s and must preserve the gains made in the past 20 years in terms of right of Afghans to self-determination, rights of women and minorities, and ensuring an ethnic balance in the future government in Afghanistan. Dr. Jaishankar asserted that peace process must be Afghan-led, controlled and owned, and Afghanistan's neighbors must contribute to durable peace.
Friday saw a key session being held at the Raisina Dialogue on what lies ahead for Afghanistan in view of US President Joe Biden's announcement that all US troops are set to withdraw from the country by 11th of September. During the session, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif and Afghanistan's National Security Advisor Hamdullah Mohib shared their views on the desirable future roadmap for Afghanistan. Dr. Jaishankar reiterated that the peace process in Afghanistan must be Afghan-led, owned and controlled, and neighbors are willing to support Afghans build a future of their own choice.
It's important that the rest of us, the international community, we have a clear sense of, it is finally for the Afghan people, obviously, to determine the future. But I don't think we should let the achievements of the last 20 years, and again, I'm not by any means suggesting that the last 20 years were perfect. In fact, we have our own share of complaints and issues about how things were conducted in the last 20 years. But the fact is, many things have happened in the last 20 years. They are reality today. They are part of, what are the legitimate aspirations and the assumptions of the Afghan people.
Dr. Jaishankar asserted that the gains made in the last 20 years since the fall of the Taliban regime must not go in vain. He stressed that Afghanistan needs a double peace process within the country and peace around the country, a bit that Afghanistan's neighbors must contribute towards.
The neighbors of Afghanistan, unfortunately, have very often played a very negative role. So, which is the point, therefore, I had made in Dushanbe, that Afghanistan needs a double peace. It needs a peace within, it needs a peace around.
Afghan NSA Hamdullah Mohib said that the peace process must see the participation of all different groups in Afghanistan, including Taliban. He underlined that no group or faction should be excluded in the process to build a peaceful and stable Afghanistan.
There is consensus in the region that came out from the Troika dialogue discussion, and that was, which was announced, we welcomed as well, is a united, democratic and sovereign Afghanistan. And I think we will work towards achieving that, and we are in the best position to do that.
Iran Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif cautioned that Taliban must not look to create a vacuum in Afghanistan, as that would mean a return to violence.
We believe that whatever we think of the Taliban, it is a reality in Afghanistan and they have to be engaged. But based on democratic terms, not based on anybody's individual self-serving terms. If the Taliban want to go back to the 90s, whether their ideology has changed or not, whether their approach has changed or not, but it is impossible to go back to the 90s.
Iranian Foreign Minister further added that another war in the region cannot be tolerated, as 3 million refugees in Iran and the region cannot bear any more burden of violence. All eyes are now on how the peace process proceeds in Afghanistan and if it will lead to durable peace in the country and the region. With Bureau Inputs, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And now the Ministry of External Affairs in India has released a statement on the announcement that was made days ago by Joe Biden, the President of the United States, that the US will be withdrawing all its troops from Afghanistan by the 11th of September. Here's what India says. India says that Afghans have seen more than 4 decades of war and unrest already, and they don't deserve any more violence, unrest and war going forward. The 2 decades out of these 4 decades are after 9/11, when the US military intervention took place in Afghanistan. What else did India say? Well, the Ministry of External Affairs has said that Afghans deserve long-lasting peace and development. And India, in fact, has contributed no less than $3 billion to Afghanistan's reconstruction, to strengthening democratic institutions there, also building the Afghan parliament and several other institutions. Afghan peace process must be Afghan-owned, led and controlled. This is a statement that has been repeatedly made by the Ministry of External Affairs, and this has got backing from other regional partners in this particular region, like from Iran and from other countries as well. And any political statement must be inclusive. Any political settlement must be inclusive. This is what the Ministry of External Affairs is saying. So it should have representation of all ethnic minorities and of all ethnicities, in fact, of women and of minorities as well. Political settlement must preserve gains of 19 years, and those gains should not be lost now in the kind of political settlement that is reached going forward. India supports united, democratic and sovereign Afghanistan. So this is what the MEA is saying, that democracy should take stronger roots there. It should not be the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. In other words, India concerned about increase in violence and targeted killings. In a week's time, recently 100 people were killed in the violence in Afghanistan. So India is saying it is concerned about the increase in violence and targeted killings in Afghanistan. What more is India saying? India calls for immediate and comprehensive ceasefire in the context of the violence that has been witnessed there in the recent past. And India is also saying, and the slide is coming up next, India has called for an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire, and India has participated in conferences in Doha, Geneva and Dushanbe. So India is saying that it is very much engaged as far as this peace process is concerned in the capacity of a regional partner. India remains engaged with Afghan stakeholders, regional as well as global partners. So India is saying that it remains engaged with the peace process in Afghanistan and is in touch with stakeholders within Afghanistan, regional partners as well as global partners. We'll take a break at this point in time, but after the break we'll discuss what does the present situation in this region really mean for India. What are the options before India after Biden's announcement that US will be pulling out all its troops by the 11th of September, which is the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this year. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In focus tonight is US troops withdrawal from Afghanistan, options before India. To discuss that, we are joined by Amar Sinha, former Indian ambassador to Afghanistan, and Sushant Sareen, senior fellow with ORF, a strategic affairs analyst. I welcome you both to Newsnight. I'll begin with you, Ambassador Sinha, on what do you make of what's coming up next, because the situation is quite fluid in Afghanistan. India has already said that it is quite concerned with increase in violence and targeted killings there. Are you expecting an inclusive political process and a political settlement going forward, or is it just too early to say anything at this point in time?
Well, going forward, of course, Afghanistan faces certain uncertainties right now because the opinion there is divided where it is the right time or not the right time for Americans to leave. But this debate will always happen no matter when Americans decided to leave. And I think the path was very clearly laid out by President Trump, and include not only President Trump, even Vice President Biden when he was with President Obama. I think he was very certain that he would like to continue this war, and he made it very clear in his statement. Obviously, it creates a certain uncertainty because what happens to the Doha process, which was sort of started after the Doha deal of last February. That may be dead in water. So I don't think there is a process right now. What is happening are peace efforts, and this will have to start all over again. From our perspective, I think that we should welcome this decision because that brings a certain finality to the situation. and the Afghans will have to take control of this, and it will really become an intra-Afghan and Afghan-controlled process. Now it depends on the wisdom of these people, both sides, whether they wish to continue the war. Obviously, indications are that Taliban still wants to reach Kabul and achieve power through military means. So I think that there will be an initial upsurge in violence and attacks, but we'll have to see.
Okay. Sushant Sareen, there is a statement from the Taliban, and that is that Americans delaying the withdrawal has opened the way for them to take countermeasures. The American side will be responsible for all future consequences and not the Islamic Emirate. What do you make of this reference of the Islamic Emirate, and how does it augur for regional partners who want democracy to take stronger roots in Afghanistan, including a partner like India?
Look, I think from my point of view, what the Taliban are doing is what the Taliban have always done. At one level, they've never made any bones about the fact that they are aspiring for an Islamic Emirate, and that the latest statement only reaffirms that particular fact. The second thing is, I think this is part of their negotiating strategy. This is the way a lot of us, they are medieval monsters, but aside of that, they are also very skillful diplomats in their own right. They know and they have used whatever leverages they have pretty skillfully in their negotiations with the Americans and with the other people in the international community. And what they are doing is they are pushing the envelope. They are saying that, okay, fine, the Americans have reneged on their part of the bargain. As a result, we are going to, indulge in a bit of brinkmanship so that in that 4-month period, while the Americans are still there, can we extract something more from what is happening insofar as the diplomacy is concerned? So I think that is one part of what they are doing. But more importantly, I think the decision of the Americans to leave, and I agree with what Ambassador Sinha said, that it gives a degree of finality to what was in any case on the anvil. But I think I was very happy to hear from both the Afghan National Security Advisor today, as well as the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, because one, I don't think the Afghans are showing any panic. There is a panic among, the parachute journalists of the Western media and people who predict doomsday in Afghanistan every second day. But I think the people in positions of authority and positions of power in Afghanistan are showing a level of confidence which actually is very important. And what did Mohib say, the National Security Advisor? He said, look, it's good that the Americans are leaving. We don't need them to fight our wars. We are capable of doing it. But yes, he acknowledged the reality that we need the support of the international community, both in terms of weapons, in terms of the military wares, also on the economic front. As long as that support continues, I think the Afghan government is going to survive. More importantly was what Foreign Minister Zarif said. And the fact that the Iranians are engaging with the Taliban and yet are insisting that the Taliban cannot undo the progress of the last 20 years, cannot undermine the democratic institutions and culture which has developed in Afghanistan. I think that is a very significant statement. To my mind, it means that the region as such, including India, Iran, there's one point of quibble which I have with what the External Affairs Minister said in his intervention during the Raisina dialogue, when he says Afghanistan's neighbors. It's not Afghanistan neighbors who have played a negative role. It is only one neighbor of Afghanistan which has played a negative role. All other neighbors have tried to support in howsoever and whatsoever manner they could, progress in Afghanistan. The only one neighbor which has been the nub of the problem remains the nub of the problem, and that is Pakistan. So I think all in all, what we heard from the Raisina dialogue today, I think is pretty encouraging as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so let's take the bull by its horns. You referred to Pakistan. The name was not clearly spelt out in that discussion that happened in the Raisina dialogue. How to tackle the issue, Ambassador Sinha, of Pakistan's meddling with Afghanistan. There are Taliban is actually the proxy of Pakistan, and we are aware how various sanctuaries were given to Taliban leaders along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So we've seen how Pakistan has dealt with this, how Pakistan sees Afghanistan through the lens of strategic depth. So considering all of this, what do you think, I mean, what is the answer really to what Pakistan is doing there in the region?
Let me start by saying that all the three statements I thought was perhaps the most very elaborate and very forceful and very clear, including our foreign ministers. And when he used the term neighbors, Sushant, I don't think he was referring to Iran, obviously. There are other neighbors also. Afghanistan has 7 neighbors. You can look around the map and perhaps he was referring to some other countries which support particular neighbors of Afghanistan, which gives Pakistan that strength. Pakistani policy has been very consistent and it started, 40 years ago maybe. In fact, if you see Benazir Bhutto's book I just picked up today, and she says that her general is asking her in 89, that madam, we have already taken care of one superpower and your military waits your command to take care of the Americans. So perhaps she did not give that permission, but anyway, they have fulfilled that desire. But obviously, it's a double-edged sword, what they are bargaining. In fact, I don't know whether they'll fall in it. But you see what this deal will do. It will do 2 things. First, of course, it goes back into Afghan control, both sides, Taliban as well as the Republic. Second, it will actually, in some way, regionalize this issue. So all the neighbors who have been quoting Taliban for last couple of years will really have to now step up to the plate to show whether Taliban has more influence than Mr. Khalilzad had, because he couldn't deliver Taliban to Turkey. I think this support will go, and one key point that we forget, that it is not only withdrawal of American troops, of course it's all foreign troops, but there's also what our foreign minister said, that number of foreign fighters, they also have to withdraw from Afghanistan and from the bases across the borders. And till that happens, I don't think Taliban will be seeing reason or will have enough incentive to negotiate. And the last thing that Americans' withdrawal would do, the salience of Pakistan and also Taliban would suddenly decrease. In fact, now there will be greater scrutiny of Taliban. In fact, people will start questioning, and we should question, that exactly who is hosting them in Doha, what is their status, on what grounds are they traveling when they are still under sanctions of the UN. So a lot of questions will arise. So it's not that it's just a disaster for Afghanistan. I think you will see that as things will unfold, Taliban will also perhaps realize that it has chewed, or it has bitten more than it can chew.
Absolutely. Sushant, Sareen, where does this leave India? What are the options before us, considering that we have a lot of goodwill among Afghans? We've invested quite a bit in the infrastructure in Afghanistan and its reconstruction and building the road network and building its parliament, building a dam there, and doing a lot more in terms of training their police forces.
No, I think investments which we have made in the capacity building of Afghanistan, in the regeneration of Afghanistan, I think the Afghans themselves have acknowledged it. Every single survey in Afghanistan of how the international community has interacted with the Afghans has put India on top of the list. And you have one of the people who was a practitioner on the show today, Ambassador Sinha, and he'll bear me out when I say that the Indian approach to Afghanistan's development was very different from everybody else's. We didn't tell the Afghans what we thought they needed. We let the Afghans tell us what they needed, and we tried to provide it to the best of our ability. And I think that was a fundamental difference between how we approached Afghans' developmental requirements and how the rest of the world did it. Most of the rest of the world was more interested in, giving it to their own favorite NGOs, to their own consultants and what have you. So India, in a manner of speaking, developmental spending, got maximum bang for the buck. And the Afghans, of course, acknowledge that. But that investment is one part of India's engagement with Afghanistan. I think India has a very vital interest linked to Afghanistan. India has very serious concerns about how what unfolds in Afghanistan in the future, and India's investment not just in terms of the monies that we've put in Afghanistan, but India is invested in the security of Afghanistan because our own security is linked with the security of Afghanistan. So clearly, India is not going to let go just like that. Number one. Number two, I think it is very important to understand that while, yes, we can't put boots on the ground, we can't militarily intervene, and we should not also. But even otherwise, I think India's options are not limited only because, we were riding on the American shoulders, and once the Americans leave, India has no feet to stand on in Afghanistan. I don't think that's true. I think India has enough options as far as Afghanistan is concerned. And in some of those options, in a sense, were alluded to by Foreign Minister Zarif today, when he refused to give a carte blanche to Taliban, whatever they do, and he laid down in his own way certain red lines which the Iranians would expect the Taliban to observe. And that is the kind of a thing which the Russians, Indians, everybody else would do. So if the Taliban think that they will have a free run, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Ambassador Sinha has in his own diplomatic way also suggested the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ambassador Sinha and Sushant Sareen, for having joined us for discussing the regional situation after the decision by Joe Biden to withdraw all US troops by the 11th of September this year and what it means for India. Let's move on now. Maldives Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid met External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi on Friday. Both the ministers reviewed ongoing projects and cooperation in the multilateral arena. India has assured continued supply of essential commodities to Maldives. The leaders agreed that climate financing, which enables transactional finance to occur, is the need of the hour, and the connectivity between financing, risk mitigation and capacity building is important to transition to solar energy. Foreign Minister Shahid thanked India for its support to Maldives and other countries during challenging times for providing the COVID-19 vaccines.
India has been exemplary, outstanding generosity. When the Indian vaccination rollout was initiated within 48 hours, Maldives received Indian grant of 200,000 vaccines. And not only to the Maldives, India's outreach of generosity to the rest of the world in these very difficult times has really defined the humanity.
More than 13 crore 98 lakh people worldwide have so far tested positive for COVID-19, while over 11 crore 88 lakh have recovered from COVID-19. The deadly virus has so far claimed around well over 30 lakh 2,476 lives globally, and the United States continues to be the worst affected country by the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's a report.
Around the world, cases and deaths are continuing to increase at worrying rates. Globally, the number of new cases per week has nearly doubled over the past 2 months. This is approaching the highest rate of infection that we have seen so far during the pandemic.
Grim news from the WHO chief warning of spiraling cases even in less affected areas. Papua New Guinea is emerging as an area of concern with a surge in COVID-19 infections. Meanwhile, the dichotomy between overstretched healthcare infrastructure and people looking for an end to restrictions and lockdown continues to widen. A congressional hearing in USA on the coronavirus pandemic became heated on Thursday after Republican Jim Jordan repeatedly challenged infectious diseases expert Dr. Anthony Fauci for a timeline on an end to public safety measures. A question being asked around the world with no answer in sight.
When it comes down, what number do we get our liberties back? Tell me the number. Tell me the number.
When 90% of the members of Congress get vaccinated.
But you're not a doctor, Mr. Clyburn. He is. What is the number? I can't
Thank
give...
you for recognizing me, Mr. Clyburn. Thank you.
Chair now recognizes for 5 minutes.
I'd like my question
Ms.
answered.
Maloney.
I don't want...
Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
Regular order.
Just a moment.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want you to answer my question. The American people want Dr. Fauci to answer the question. What does it have to be?
Expire, sir. If you need to respect the chair and shut your mouth.
A somewhat similar story is playing out in Argentina. President Alberto Fernandez on Wednesday announced closure of schools of Buenos Aires. On Thursday, Mayor of the city, Horacio Larreta, threatened to challenge the decision. Parents protested the decision, clanging pots and beating drums.
Schools should be the last thing to close and the first thing to open. This is a disgrace.
We Argentines are outraged. We are tired of them doing whatever they want with us. Neighboring Brazil continues to rank second to USA in terms of number of COVID-19 fatalities. Hospitals in Brazil were running out of drugs needed to sedate patients, with reports of the seriously ill being tied down and intubated without effective sedatives.
The lack of these drugs has made us suffer a lot with our profession, and question every day when it will end and when we will have some consolation.
In Europe, France's COVID-19 death toll rises on Thursday to more than 1 lakh, according to the latest hospital figures from the Health Ministry. A bleak statistic for President Emmanuel Macron's government. Coronavirus deaths in France have now nearly doubled from just over 52,000 at the end of its second lockdown at the end of November. Health Ministry data also showed that 5,924 people were in intensive care unit on Thursday, up from 5,902 a day earlier.
It's a pretty sad symbolic milestone of sorts. I think we could have avoided it, but then again, it's quite complicated to do and to say. I hope it won't go too far with the vaccines.
A decision on whether the European Union should sign new contracts for COVID-19 vaccines with AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson is still awaited. US health agencies earlier this week recommended pausing the use of the J&J shot in a fresh setback to efforts to tackle the pandemic. J&J also said it would delay rollout of the vaccine to Europe. The halt follows restrictions imposed by many European countries on using an alternative vaccine from AstraZeneca in response to similar reports of blood clotting among a small number of recipients. In this backdrop, German Chancellor Angela Merkel urged lawmakers on Friday to approve new powers that will allow her to force coronavirus lockdowns and curfews on areas with high infection rates, saying a majority of Germans were in favor of stricter measures. Her government wants Parliament to change the Infection Protection Act to enable federal authorities to enforce restrictions, even if regional leaders resist them, hoping to alleviate pressure on intensive care units. In some relief, high-speed trains running from the Italian capital of Rome to the country's financial capital, Milan, began operating carrying only passengers that have tested negative for COVID-19 from Friday. Universal Studios Hollywood opened up its door on 15th April for the first time in over a year. After being shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic, the official opening is on Friday. Visitors can experience many of the rides and eat at the restaurants, although some rides and indoor restaurants will remain closed. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the British government has approved the extradition of a fugitive diamond merchant Nirav Modi to India. UK's Home Secretary Priti Patel signed the extradition order on Friday. The CBI officials confirmed the news. Earlier, the UK Westminster Court had allowed the extradition plea and sent the case to the Home Secretary. In February this year too, a London court had ordered extradition of Nirav Modi. The court had then said that Nirav Modi had conspired to destroy evidence and has a case to answer for in India. The diamond merchant is wanted in India in connection with the 14,000 crore rupees PNB scam case. Once extradited to India, Nirav Modi will face charges of fraud, money laundering, alleged intimidation of witnesses and disappearance of evidence. The accused now has the legal recourse of approaching the UK High Court within 14 days to seek permission for moving an appeal against the decision. A gunman shot 8 people dead and injured several others at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis, Indiana, before taking his own life. That's what police said early on Friday. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department spokesperson said the authorities did not feel there was an active threat to the community anymore. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai was sentenced to 14 months in prison while 9 other activists received jail time or suspended sentences on Friday for taking part in unauthorized assemblies during a mass pro-democracy protest in 2019. Senior barrister Martin Lee, who helped launch the city's largest opposition Democratic Party in the 1990s and is often called the former British colony's father of democracy, was given an 11-month suspended sentence. Back home, the Indian Meteorological Department predicted a normal monsoon for this year. The Met Department is expecting 2021 to be the third consecutive year for a normal monsoon. Around 75% of rainfall is owed to monsoons in the country, and the prediction of a normal monsoon is expected to bring cheer to the agricultural sector. In sports news, Olympic-bound star Indian wrestler Vinesh Phogat won her maiden Asian Championship gold medal after she pinned her rival in the summit clash in Almaty on Friday. There was no stopping Vinesh in the absence of the Chinese and Japanese rivals as she cruised to the title without losing a point in the 53 kilograms category. Vinesh has notched up 7 podium finishes at the Asian meet over the years, including 3 silver medals before this edition. 19-year-old Anshu Malik also won gold medal in Asian Championships in the 57 kilograms category. Anshu had won the bronze medal in the last edition. Anshu has already qualified for Tokyo Olympics by finishing amongst top 2 in Asian Olympic qualifiers last week. That's it then in this edition of Newsnight. Thanks for watching.